Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Windows Weekly is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com. This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott, episode 46 for January 11th, 2008. Statler and Waldorf on CES. Windows Weekly is brought to you by Audible.com. For your free audiobook, visit audible.com/Windows. And by listeners like you. Thanks for your donations. It's time for Windows Weekly, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sounding a little bit like Howard Cosell. That's because
I was going to say, you sound like crap.
I am hopped up on cold medicine and fine cigars. Little Johnny Walker Red.
This is going to be my chance to shine. I finally sound better than you.
You sound much better than me. Mr. Paul Thurrott, ladies and gentlemen. He's from the super site for Windows, winsupersite.com, and, of course, the news editor for Windows IT Pro, and the author of the very, very popular and attractive Windows Vista Secrets with Brian Livingston. That's available from Wiley & Sons. We haven't talked in ages. I was in Egypt, you know.
Yes, how was that?
I am now talking like an Egyptian. I thought it was walk like an Egyptian, but it turns out I talk like an Egyptian. No, I got, it's funny. I didn't get sick the whole time. And then I get on the plane home, and it's 17 hours in the air. And, of course, I get a cold on the plane. And the nastiest cold I've ever
You were gone a week or so, right?
Yeah, it wasn't that long on the ground because, it's 2 days to get there, 2 days back. But we were there 8 days. It was amazing, Paul. Time you get to... I know you love to travel. And, of course,
I've
Paris...
been to Israel. I've not been to...
well, you're right next door. In Paris, they've got Cleopatra's Needle, that obelisk that they stole from Luxor.
I was going to say they stole that.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Actually, it's funny. The Egyptian guides say, we were in a mosque in Cairo, and the Egyptian guy says, see that clock there? That crappy clock? The French gave us that in return for the obelisk they put in Paris.
Yeah.
And it's never worked.
It's never worked, right? It's French.
Never worked. It's French. It's a French clock. It's never worked.
It's right twice a day.
They're still bitter. 150 years later, they're still bitter about it.
Well, they should be bitter. The whole world came down. They stole everything.
That's really true. It's really true. Although they have so much stuff that there's still plenty to see. The Museum of Antiquities in Cairo is kind of it's overflowing. They've got mummies everywhere.
I heard they were talking about protecting the image of the pyramids such that other countries would not be allowed to create pyramids that were roughly the same size and shape as their pyramids.
You mean like
and
the
that would
Luxor?
That would affect the Luxor, if they did that.
Which, speaking of the Luxor, we now can segue to...
Wow, nicely
Vegas
played.
And CES. You're not there. I'm not there. Is there something wrong with us, Paul?
No, I think we've done something very right. This is one of those things I am almost embarrassed to brag about this, but this was the best decision I ever made. I did the same thing last year, i.e. not going to CES. But I woke up Monday morning, not necessarily worried, but I immediately went online to see what had happened, if anything, in that first night of CES. And what a disappointment, There's just nothing going on there. Nothing.
It's the Crapfest electronics show. I've never seen so much crap in my life.
Yeah, it's exhibition space the size of Providence, Rhode Island,
which isn't that big, but
3,000 of your closest friends.
Yeah,
and nothing. Hotel rooms, they're $500, $700, $800 a night.
Cab lines that take 3 hours to get anywhere.
If you're lucky, you'd be lucky to even get in a cab. It is a complete waste of time and money. And by the way, they announce things that supposedly are going to come out for Christmas of this year. And as we could look at last year and say, Microsoft announced a bunch of stuff last year that still hasn't shipped. And it's getting a little long in the tooth. I hear there's some concern with CES that the hotel rooms are so expensive for people that it's getting crazy, and they're actually considering getting out of Vegas. But
there's nowhere else you can go. There you can't have a show that big anywhere else. Brazil, you can go to Rio.
I just think that this show is too big and too noisy and too crazy, and it just underdelivers every year. And
I was feeling guilty. I was. Somebody said, you're going to Macworld, but you're not going to CES. How can you call yourself a tech reporter?
Yeah.
And I was feeling guilty.
Well,
but
listen, I'm a Windows guy. There's no doubt about it. But I am looking forward to Macworld, and I have no doubt that Macworld will generate more interesting news and products than did CES. I have no doubt. It certainly happened last year.
The iPhone dominated CES, and Apple's not even there.
Right.
Well,
by the way,
who was the big
this was Bill Gates' last keynote.
Yes.
And if they're smart, CES will approach Steve Jobs about keynoting next year.
And he'll say,
screw you.
No way.
That's what he'll say. But
why should he? He's got more attention for an all-Apple show that's smaller, easier, and more interesting. And frankly, they're the big consumer electronics giant. They're as big as anyone.
Right. Well, I mean,
that's part
you
of the
have
problem
basically
with
the whole industry except for Apple at CES, and then you have Apple by itself.
Well, is Dell there? Who goes to CES anymore?
Yeah, Dell's there, HP's there, right. Lenovo's there.
Asus
the big consumer
Asus
electronics companies, Sony, Panasonic.
Yeah, TVs
They're
are
all
big.
there.
You go there for TVs.
Yeah, TVs are big.
A lot of crappy MP3 players.
I'm sorry, is there someone on Earth that doesn't have a TV yet? I get that they're getting bigger and thinner, and but
and a lot of what they show is show-off stuff, like a 9mm plasma from Pioneer, but you can't get it yet.
Who cares?
150 inch plasma, but you can't afford that.
If I want to go look at TVs I can't afford, I'll go down to Best Buy and go in their little Magnolia theater room there, and I'll spend 10 seconds looking at that 60-inch thing that I'm never going to buy, and whatever. I saved myself $9,000. I don't know.
We sound like a couple of bitter old men.
I know I do, and I know, and I feel like I should be more excited about this, but I parsed through all the announcements, especially the Microsoft stuff. I actually watched on video the keynotes for Yahoo and Microsoft. They're available online. You don't even have to go. And by the way, even if you were there, the chances of getting into the Bill Gates keynote are actually pretty slim.
Oh, really?
Unless you're,
it's hard, huh?
Have a press pass or something.
I loved the video they did. Did you see the video he did?
Yeah. Yeah, that was cute.
Bill Gates' last day. Mm-hmm. I thought that was great. I put that on my blog. I thought that's always been the best part of his keynotes at CES and Comdex was these little videos they'd make.
Yeah. So this year, for the first time, that kind of video is actually available online. Previously, those things were blacked out from the webcast that they did. So now there's even less of a reason to go. Mm-hmm. It seems like every year I went to CES, I think I was sick 50% of the time too, because it happens right in the middle of the winter, and of course, flying from Boston in the winter can be a disaster. And
always get sick.
I have no guilt about not being there at all. Other than that, there's some people I don't mind seeing, that I don't get to see a lot, in the press or at Microsoft. And
that's really that's what it's for. And the people who are there are the working stiffs who have to go.
Well, and I would say, there's a certain element of the sort of the blogosphere or whatever, or the people who feel like they have to try to make this sound exciting.
Right.
I feel bad for the sort of Wall Street Journal / New York Times or whoever is there, and they have to sort of hype it up a little bit because they want people to watch their little videos and read their little articles. And, there's nothing going on there. Nothing.
I've never seen so much garbage in my life.
Yeah. It's a giant exhibition of nothing.
Now, people are going to say we protest too much, and it's because we couldn't go or what. We could go, absolutely could go. And I missed it. We get pressure.
I'm automatically signed in every year. I don't even have to sign up.
we're pressured.
I'm getting CES stuff as if I had been there.
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah, I haven't gone in. I think 3 or 4 years. Issue. No,
I could afford to go, I guess, if I wanted to be, throw money away like that. I could do that, but that's not the,
Well, it's kind of like a football game too. You could cover it better from a distance than you can up close.
Well, also, yes, sure. And I would just say, too, looking over the year at the events that are coming up, there are some events I am going to. The Windows Server 2008 launch, I will go to that.
Right.
WinHack, I will go to. I've been going for several years now.
Very important. Very important.
Yeah, PDC is happening this year. Mm-hmm. Probably the first time we're going to get a lot of information about Windows 7. I will go to that. These events all make sense to me, and I'm sure there'll be some others, that I'm not aware of yet that I may go to this year. But CES, the last few times that I went, it's so loud and so obnoxious and so impossible just to really cover it all because of its sheer size. It just became unfun,
So what did you think what did you think of Bill Gates' keynote? I mean, did he say anything important?
No,
never does.
No, he never does.
Was it sad? Was there a tear shed?
No, they did a little goofy thing about, this is my last keynote, whatever. But no, I mean, there were.
It's great. He got Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, George Clooney, Bono in this video. It was amazing.
Listen, Steve Jobs could walk out next week and read us his laundry and list and tell us what he's going to buy at the store that week, and it will be a better keynote than this Gates thing. And it's just different styles. Gates is just not that interesting of a person. And unfortunately for Microsoft, and I really do feel bad about this, there's just nothing interesting going on. Windows Vista didn't sell as well as they had expected. Microsoft Surface has still not ever happened. The Xbox 360 had a $1 billion warranty hit last year. The Zune doesn't have TV shows or movies. The Media Center extenders that they announced last year have never shipped.
Yeah.
The Xbox IP TV thing they announced last year has never shipped. So what do they do this year? They kind of talk about all that stuff again.
Right.
This year. If you're not even going to ship it in the year that you talked about it originally, how are we supposed to care anymore?
Right.
You're going to talk about the same stuff now a year later? I'm sorry. I'm so thoroughly underwhelmed by this whole thing.
Was there anything that Microsoft said that is new?
That was positive?
OLPC, the Origami. Is that all?
Well, there's some little PCs. They talked about the next version of Origami, but that's unfortunately because of the hardware that's built.
Nobody's
kind of a niche market there. Yeah. Windows Vista, as predicted, sold 100 million licenses last year. But even Microsoft admitted that doesn't mean 100 million people are using it. The number of people using it is probably considerably less than that. That's disgusting. They sold, PC makers sold over 250 million computers last year.
Wow.
Are you seriously telling me that at least 150 million of those people are using XP? Really?
That's pretty amazing, actually.
It's utterly amazing.
But, there's nothing wrong with XP.
No, there's nothing wrong with XP, but maybe there is something wrong with Vista. Why are people not choosing Vista in such huge numbers?
I guess it's just there's nothing so right with Vista that makes it worth the upgrade.
The whole thing it just freaks me out. I feel bad about this.
Depressed. I should have stayed in Egypt. I'm
sorry.
You bummed me out, man.
There's a chance here now. Gates is stepping down in July. It doesn't mean that the company's going to change dramatically. I think I would argue that a lot of those changes have already occurred. So maybe it's not like we're going to see a brand new Microsoft or a different Microsoft. But I hope we do. In a way, I hope something changes.
I noticed in the movie at the end. Palmer says to Steve, see you tomorrow at the board meeting. I mean, very clear, at the last sentence is, and he's still part of the company.
Yeah. Oh, of course. The other thing I thought, and I don't mean to rag on the guy, but, Gates obviously is not coming back, but Robbie Bach, who runs the, entertainment and devices division at Microsoft, very clearly said, I will see you next year, almost a threat, coming from him. So,
well, isn't that Microsoft's bright light? I mean, the server side and their entertainment side; those are the real successes this year. Am I wrong?
Well, I don't know. I mean, certainly the Xbox 360 has done well, but arguably the Wii has sold as many consoles in less than half the time.
That's a good point.
They have the biggest and best online service. There's no doubt about that. But then again, a lot of those people aren't actually paying for the service. They did have that $1 billion plus warranty hit last year for all the reliability problems.
And they bet on the wrong high-def player.
Oh, they absolutely bet on the wrong high-def player. In fact, that's
HD
maybe one of the things we should have been talking about today.
That's the big story, and that was announced 3 days before CES.
Yes, and two things about that affected Microsoft. One was that HD DVD was going to be a huge part of their keynote, and they took that all out of there. They never mentioned HD DVD once. The other thing is that there were big rumors that Microsoft was getting ready to announce a Xbox 360 Ultimate that was going to include an embedded HD DVD drive. Now, they will deny this up and down, and I actually have no inside information about this, but it wouldn't surprise me to discover that was the case. And what was it? Not Paramount, Warner Brothers.
Warner Brothers, yeah.
Dropped HD DVD last week, right before CES. I mean, right on the eve of CES.
The HD DVD Alliance had to cancel their press conference at CES.
Yes.
I mean, it's a disaster.
It is a disaster, yeah. And by the way, to be fair, it's not like either one of these formats is going gangbusters. But
well, one of the reasons is because of this indecision. So I think this is going to make the difference.
I think so too, and I think that this is the first crack I've seen where I can legitimately say, okay, now this site has a definite advantage.
Right. I agree with you.
I have both here. I can tell you that from sort of a technical standpoint, they're both stunning. I mean, they're identical visually and sonically, but obviously Blu-ray has more storage and now has much more support from the industry, and I think that's going to be the way it's going to go.
Will Microsoft now do Blu-ray? Or I don't know. They will?
A Blu-ray add-on drive?
Yeah.
They actually did say this week that they're certainly open to that. They have no... Yeah, I mean, they'll do what people want them to do.
Sure. It's not that expensive to do.
No, that's great.
It's got to hurt them a little bit, though, since the PlayStation 3 is the most affordable way to buy a Blu-ray player.
Right. Not anymore, actually. They have some $300 Blu-ray players now.
$100 more, you get a PS3.
Absolutely, and the PS3 I think has some technical advantages over the low end Blu-ray.
It's upgradable.
Yeah, they're right. So they're actually upgradable to new functionality, which is really interesting. And I don't know the names of the specs, but I know there's a more recent Blu-ray spec that offers better interactive features of some sort. So.
And I think that was ironic that's the big story at CES, and it happened before CES.
Yeah. Well, and the bigger story that will happen after CES, at Macworld next week. So
yeah, we'll be covering that show live on our Mac Break Weekly show. You not with you, Paul. We won't make you cover Macworld Expo.
I'll just sit in the background and make snorting sounds.
Yeah. Well, I don't see anything on the horizon that Apple could announce, and yet the fact that they announced this upgrade to the 8-way power before tells me. They're getting that out of the way. They're clearing the deck. You don't clear the deck unless you have something to say. So it's got to be more than an upgraded iPhone.
Not to get off into Apple land too far, but the MacBook that slides into the side of the iMac-looking monitor, awesome. If that happens, absolutely awesome.
Well, that's an interesting
iPhone SDK is something they should talk about. If they do a flash-based small form factor MacBook Pro, I'm very, very interested in that.
I think that's what it
was. And we'll see. They could. I think they're going to. I think they're going to surprise people. I mean, that's the sort of obvious stuff that everybody knows about. But
I was in a very awkward position because we taped the TV show in Canada way ahead of time, and so last month I was taping the February shows, and somebody asked me, "So tell me about Macworld Expo," and I had to say, "Well, what I'm about to say, you will either know immediately is complete hooey." That's a difficult position to be put in. I mean, the people who are watching the show will know.
Right.
I'm guessing, but we'll see. Windows Home Server, WHS Power Pack.
Yes.
Hard on the heels of the Windows Home Server release. Already a Power Pack.
Yeah, well, yes, but they announced that they were working on this a while ago. They had changed the name. It was originally going to be the Update Release 1 or whatever. But very interesting. Basically an interim upgrade, assembled as a single package. So it has a bunch of new features. And the big deal, of course, is that it finally is adding support for the x64 client, which is one of the things that was missing when Windows Home Server shipped a couple of months ago. So you'll be able to protect. Cool. Yeah, you can protect your 64-bit clients and so forth. So that's cool.
Yeah, I know you like Windows Home Server. What are the early returns? People are finally using it now.
Yeah. Well, positive, but one of the things that happened while you were away was that Microsoft issued this sort of vaguely worded, knowledge base article that there could be some corruption issues.
Oh boy,
on Windows Home Server,
would the Power Pack fix that?
No, the fix for this will be shipped separately. The Power Pack is basically just improvements across the board to various things. For example, if you log in remotely, you can see your photos in thumbnail view in the browser, that kind of stuff. It's just you can actually do an external backup to the whole home server, which is probably the number one request people have had.
Yeah,
just that extra layer of protection. I've actually been using that Jungle Disk service to back up my not all of it, but the photos and some of the documents
to Amazon's S3. Yeah, we interviewed the author of that. That's on Security Now. That's a really neat service.
Yeah, it's excellent. It just works great. And I had, we recently switched to FIOS for everything, and ever since I did this,
I'm so jealous.
My internet connection has been going up and down. And actually, I should have mentioned that previously. So if I drop off the face of the earth,
I wasn't going to say anything, but because I don't want to jinx it. But you sound great. So that's the FIOS.
Oh, good. Okay, we're screwed.
No, you sound much better.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, okay. So I've had a problem with this almost every single day, but I got my first Jungle Disk error.
I like how you say that. That's how they said it in Dedham. Error.
I know. I can hear myself say it and I cringe. Error.
That's what the Red Sox do.
There's an R in the end of that.
Bill Buckner for the error.
But it was because the connection had gone down overnight and they couldn't connect to the service. So
no, we're getting the best connection we've ever gotten. 20 jitter, 98 millisecond round trip. This is better than I get with Steve Gibson, who has a T1. So,
well,
it's Comcast is responding to this. That was the other interesting announcement at CES. The one other is Comcast says they're going to go to 100 megabits.
I saw that, and they're going to really turn up the dial on the like the pay-per-view and also free movies that are available
as well. You got that
HD.
kind of bandwidth, boy.
Oh yeah, so that actually looks really interesting.
I hate Comcast worse than the devil, but if they had 100 megabits, I would bite my tongue and do it.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Sure.
Unless it's $100 a month. How much is the FiOS?
Well, it's hard to say because unfortunately,
it's all bundled up.
The day they came was such a disaster, and I spent over 4 hours on hold trying to get my TV to come back up. The thing is, it finally does
getting everything on it. It's not just your data.
Well, right, that's the thing. So I am eventually going to have everything, but right now I only have TV and internet. Mm-hmm. We will switch the phone over, but I was on the phone. It was probably 7:00 at night, and she said, "Do you want me to switch the phone over now?" And I said, "No,
not yet. Wait a little.
No, let's just wait on that one." But so I don't know. There are advantages to obviously doing all three financially and so forth, but it's not any more expensive than what we were doing before, which was RCN. They're kind of a smaller cable company.
Yeah, that's Paul Allen's cable out.
But my God, the sheer number of HD channels they have, and even the the standard definition channels look amazing. I think what happens with cable is because of bandwidth limitations, it seems like they're really scaling down.
They do. They overcompress
each channel, even though it's HD.
Yep. So
when you don't have, you move to fiber, and all of a sudden the channels all come to life. They're all beautiful, gorgeous. You watch something like The Simpsons, you almost want to walk up to the TV and really look at it because it's just so clear and crisp, even though it's a standard definition show.
That's the dirty little secret of cable. It's not unlimited bandwidth. To get 500 channels on that copper, you've got to compress like crazy.
Yeah, it's like taking a movie theater and cutting it in half so you can get two screens in there, but then you can hear the movie next door, while you're watching another movie.
Exactly. That's a good analogy. I'll have to steal that.
Okay.
So you got FiOS.
I'm sure fiber has a limit, but it so far,
What other goodies were under the Paul Thurrott tree there?
for Christmas?
For the holidays, dear. Yeah. Did you get an OLPC?
I did. Well, yeah, I had that. I got an EPC more recently.
You got the Asus and the OLPC. See, I got both too.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I kind of screwed up with the EPC. I got the low-end version, and it turns out it's not upgradable, but I'm going to decide to live with that and not worry about it.
It's pretty good, though. Don't you like it?
I think it's awesome.
Now,
I'm actually shocked by it.
Are you a fat finger guy?
I'm a huge individual, so I have gorilla hands, and this is one of those things. I travel enough that I would love to have the smallest, possible computer. Yeah. And this is something I have strived for, but my hands are so big, I have to use a big,
Can you use the Asus?
Computer. No way.
No.
But what I discovered was you can plug in a USB keyboard, also a USB mouse. They work immediately. There's no loading of drivers or any of that kind of baloney, and they just work. And I have that new Apple keyboard, the really flat one that comes with the iMac.
Isn't that nice? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's long, but it's thin, so it's still pretty portable. And it's funny because it's almost twice as wide as the as the computer. But the Asus EPC is something anyone could use right away. And we've talked a lot about cloud computing and that sort of thing, and it's loaded up with Mozilla Firefox and Open Open Office, the word processing and spreadsheet and so forth. And for doing stuff like I do, most of what I do, which is email through Gmail or browsing the web with Firefox, this thing works fine. It works great. Obviously with the job that I have, and I have certain technical requirements, and obviously I have to write about Windows and so forth.
But you can write on that and have a Windows machine next to it. How about the OLPC? I think this is so cute. Now you can't really use it in public because you're going to get more attention than you really want.
I'm desperate to whip this thing out in a meeting someday.
Oh man, you get such attention.
But I can't type on that one either because it has worse. What it looks like. It looks like the keyboard could be used underwater or something.
It's for children. It's a membrane keyboard and it's for little tiny fingers. But
yes, here's the thing.
Screen.
My kids are in love with it. My kids bother me about this computer all the time. They want to use it. They want to play with it. Yeah. It's got this rabbit ear antenna. Well, it's got
little rabbit ears.
Antennas that stick up on the side. And
the screen is spectacular. Much better than the Asus screen.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. But the operating system that they're using, or the way that you interact with it is kind of bizarre to me.
Yeah. It's not.
Whereas I have to say the EPC, if you're used to computers, it's not so much as a desktop, but there's just big icons. You click on them once, things load. You run the application and you go. And on the XO laptop, there's a much different model.
Yeah.
Going on there. Now both of these computers are going to be upgradable supposedly to Windows. Sometime this year, and that might make them more interesting to people. But I know on the Asus, first of all, the Asus is widely available. Anyone can buy one.
And it runs XP very well. I've seen it run XP. You should max the RAM
you can buy a version with 2 to 8 gigs of RAM. If you get a 4 gig or 8 gig version, you can actually upgrade the RAM.
And you could use an SD card.
So you can use an SD card.
Now, one thing
I actually ordered.
You want to be careful about the swap file. Can really burn out the...
that's what I had read. Actually, I guess in that much space, you might want to just turn it off.
Yeah, turn it off.
But anyway,
I've seen it. It runs very well.
Really interesting machines.
And so, where does that leave Origami? There were some Origami announcements. What is this? The Ultra Mobile PC.
Yeah, I reviewed Ultra Mobile PC last year, and the way I sort of concluded it was the software system that they build is really nice. It's sort of a media center style application that runs on top of Windows Vista now and provides you with lots of good, especially digital entertainment options. There's media playback stuff that is always on the screen no matter what module you're in and so forth. And it's nice. The problem with Ultramobile PC is that the hardware it's running on up till now has always been woefully inadequate. Mm-hmm. And I brought a Samsung Q1 with me to France last summer, and I just hated it. And it's the same deal. You can connect it to this Apple laptop or Apple keyboard. You can connect it to a mouse. You can kind of prop it up on its little stand, and you can kind of use it. But it's just so woefully slow. It's just painful to use. And one of the little announcements that came out at CES was that Intel released a bunch of new chips. I think it was the Penryn chips for mobile computing, and there will be new ultra mobile PC designs based around this chipset. And I believe that they will be much better than what was out last year. So better performance, better battery life, better energy savings, and so forth. So
that's Origami 2.0.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
You sound so excited.
Well, no, I'm willing to give it a shot. I mean, I certainly...
Asus had some, ironically, because they do the EPC, they had some Origamis, didn't they?
They did, and I wrote Asus just the other day to ask them if I could get one for review, and they're going to get back to me right after CES, because obviously the people that are there involved with that are all in Vegas. But, in the same vein... you want something that's really small that you can travel with. I don't mind bringing a keyboard around and a mouse. That's fine. I wouldn't need to use those things on a plane. It's nice. You can just whip out the little box and use it. Obviously, running Windows Vista would be great, but the current generation of ultra-mobile PCs, I would just say, is not quite up to the task.
Yeah. Was there any Zune news at CES?
No, there wasn't any, and that freaked me out. During the keynote, they mentioned the Zune Social, which is that website where you can see, it lists all the music you've listened to either on the device or in the player.
Right.
And That's all they did. They said that it was doing the new models that they released late last year were doing very, very well. And they said that they would start selling it outside of the U.S. and Canada sometime this spring. And that was literally all they said about the Zune.
I guess it was kind of like that last year. The Zune really felt like an afterthought, even last year.
Well, I think that Microsoft is in their efforts to emulate.
I don't think Bill Gates likes the Zune.
I don't know, but I would say that they released it for the holiday selling season, and now that that is over, they're not going to talk about the next generation yet because it's too soon, and they don't want to screw up sales of what they already have in the market. And unless they have some big improvements to make, which by the way there are many they could make, what's the point? So it is kind of an awkward thing because CES is obviously the big consumer show they do. And Zune is one of just a handful of big consumer products they make, and it was just sort of conspicuously missing in action. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, that's a consumer product of all the, and certainly there's plenty of MP3 players at CES. I even saw an MP5 player. Engadget had a
I don't know what that means. What is an MP5 player?
No one knows, but Engadget featured it.
Is that like my speaker goes to 11?
Yes. I've got MP3 4
I can play
5.
MP3s, but if I really want to turn it up a notch, I could play MP5s.
So you did an iPhone thing.
Mm-hmm.
Little review, kind of, here we are, iPhone 6 months later. And probably looking next week at an iPhone update.
I hope so.
Are you still using your iPhone, or have you... I stopped.
I am. This is the big, and this is actually why I wrote about it at this time, because I had reviewed the iPhone. I wrote a very long iPhone review over multiple parts over a period of months because, I think the iPhone is an important product. But, of course, over the process of writing that review, I also highlighted a big number of problems I think the device has. And I think that, as we've discussed in this podcast in the past, people who are Windows users, who, by the way, are have to constitute the biggest group of iPhone users as well.
Yeah,
there are some synchronization issues there. It's not perfect, but
it doesn't synchronize with your Outlook.
No, it does. The calendar sync is completely broken.
Oh, that's too bad.
It syncs with Safari and Internet Explorer, but not with Firefox. Who wants to use
Safari?
Yeah, not on Windows. I can't imagine why anyone would use it, but. So basically, with the understanding that Macworld was coming up and the iPhone was now being sold around the world, I thought I would come up with this list of, how Apple could fix this thing to make it right, And when I say fix it, I don't mean make it right for Apple. The iPhone is doing wonderfully for them. It's sold millions of copies. It's, Apple makes $240. Or actually, I think it's like $320 per unit every time they sell one.
Oh, it's a huge success for them, yeah.
Huge success for Apple. I don't mean for Apple. I mean, the iPhone is arguably...
And Wired wrote a very good piece this week on how the iPhone has really changed the wireless industry, and I think made a very good case for that.
And that's actually the big...
That's the story.
Deal, I think, with the iPhone.
Yeah.
In many ways, it's changed the industry.
You bet.
But I'm looking at it more, as I often do. I mean, I look at this from the perspective of people who actually have to use it,
Right.
And I think, here's a list of things that would make this better for people, for humans, the people that actually have to use the device, because, you get this thing and you're pretty much, you're signing up for 2 years here. So you're throwing 2 years of your life into this. Here are the improvements that could make it much better for people. So, but the reason I wrote this was because I honestly expected last year, as I had sort of uncovered all these flaws, many of which just made it impossible or at least hard to use for me, that I wouldn't really be able to use this as my phone. That it would be sort of I'd keep it kind of tagging along because I need to write about it. But over time, it is my phone. So I do use the iPhone. It is now my only cell phone.
That's more than I can say. I use it as an iPod. I don't use it as a phone. I use my BlackBerry.
Yeah. Well, it's like I said, it's not perfect, but they've they have improved some things over time. That have made it better. Some of the improvements, by the way, have come from an unlikely source, which is Google. So Google, the biggest thing they did, and this for me personally, was they added IMAP support for Gmail, and that allows you to use Gmail in that mail application.
That's very nice, yeah,
not on the web. which is huge. The other thing they did, which is a smaller deal, but I think is still important because it shows how viable these types of applications can be, is they released a new version of their iPhone web application, which sort of combines, search and Gmail and Calendar and Reader and some of their other mobile applications into a single unified, web application. It's really attractive. And interestingly, this past week at CES, Yahoo also introduced a beta version of a very similar web application for their stuff. And I don't use the Yahoo stuff as much, but I did load it up in the web browser to check it out. And it's absolutely beautiful. Looks great. So these things, combined with some of the other fixes that Apple has done, have put it over the edge for me. I would say I still have reservations about it. I did write this big article. I really think that this thing can and should be improved, but I think it's getting over the hump.
Yeah. Well, when you read the Wired article, you realize how much it was, how close they came to not getting it done, how rushed it was, and it makes a little more sense that they, it didn't have all the features they hoped to have.
Sure.
But I think
this plays a bit into the audio book of the week. But if you are familiar with Apple or any of these companies, Microsoft or any of the computer industry companies, I read a lot of these books about these companies and their history and how things were developed. I'm very interested how products get developed. And the one thing that struck me in that Wired article that you're referring to is that this was just like so many other stories, that somebody, often it happens to be Steve Jobs, but somebody sees what the next big thing is, and they just will it to happen.
Yes.
This is going to happen. And the other thing I thought that was really interesting in that article that didn't really get highlighted a lot was that Apple had been working on a tablet PC for a year.
Yes, I saw that.
Right? It was sort of a throwaway line.
Yes, I thought that was very interesting.
We could take this technology and put it in a phone. And so that means, they were working on like an actual PC, and maybe we'll still release such a thing.
They probably have something. It's funny, I picked up on that too. And it was just a throwaway line, but I think maybe the most interesting line.
But that's a good example of, we have this incredible technology.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily make sense at this time to release it as that product everyone is expecting. What else can we do with this? And in the end, they ended up revolutionizing. That doesn't sound right, but the cell phone market, and also just, I think, the way that people interact with devices.
Yep.
It's an important device. Like I said,
and in many ways not to their benefit. Certainly, AT&T had a lot of benefit out of it. That's very clear from the article. And I guess Apple's made it.
But they took a lot of risks. They did.
And Apple, it did say that it was Apple's most profitable product ever. So I guess
the other thing they said, by the way, I don't know if you caught this, was visual voicemail was supposed. If I read this sentence correctly, was developed by AT&T.
Apple twisted their arms, made them do it.
Yeah. It's interesting. I like stuff like that.
I thought I'm not sure exactly how. Fred Vogelstein is the author. I'm not sure how he put this together, but it is a really good. I'll put a link in the show notes, the behind-the-scenes article. Apple
is the technology equivalent of the old Soviet Union, so
he has good sources.
Nobody is speaking on record there. Yeah. But it's it reads like a lot of the stories. Showstoppers, which we mentioned, the creation of NT, or any of the early Apple or Microsoft stuff, where Microsoft finally grasped that we have to make Windows happen, and we're gonna ditch OS 2, or Steve Jobs saw the graphical user interface and said we have to commercialize this. You can point to any number of these things, and it's almost always the same. There's someone just says, look, we're going to make this happen, and the people that work on it are just so dedicated and kill themselves, and come out with something fantastic.
Well, I'm hoping Fred's doing a book, because it would be, as you say, it's a showstopper, or The Soul of a New Machine, which is, of course, the greatest book probably ever written about the computer industry by Tracy Kidder. Hey, what is your Audible pick of the week? You said you had something related.
I do. It's actually, I had read this when it came out, but I grabbed the audiobook and am now listening to it at the gym. But it's Icon, the Steve Jobs story.
And this is the controversial one that Steve...
I don't honestly understand why it was so controversial. I mean, if you've read any books about Apple's history, it does revisit a lot of stuff in the past, because it is the full Steve Jobs story up to the point it was written. So you get the early Apple stuff, you get the next stuff, and then his return to Apple. But because it is fairly up to date, it has a lot of the new stuff. And obviously that's what's lacking in the older books. So it's always interesting to go back and read about the first version of Windows or the original Macintosh. But this stuff happened 20 years ago. So
right. No iPhone stuff in here, but it is
no, it's free iPhone, but it has obviously the iPod comes into being and so forth.
Right.
The Mac has a renaissance and all that. I mean, it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, Apple was still in a dumper, and they were probably making that comeback about 10 years ago now, but a little over 10 years ago. And that turnaround is in the computer industry an important event and something that should be and will be studied, and I think it's very interesting.
Jeffrey S. Young and William Simon, the authors. It is a great book. Icon. Steve Jobs, the greatest second act in the history of business. And what's funny is that, as I remember, William Simon wrote the Gil Amelio story.
Yeah.
Which was not in the same league.
They should have just called it Mistakes Were Made.
Mistakes Were Made.
The Gil Amelio story.
The Gil Amelio story. If you want to get your free Audible book, we still have that great offer. All you got to do is go to audible.com/Windows, audible.com/Windows. Audible has 45,000 plus. I can't just say books. I mean, everything. The debates, you'll hear. It's great during a political year because they do pro bono stuff. They put the speeches up, the debates up. Learn while you drive, while you work, while you play at the gym, and boy, they're affordable, and they're just, it's, at first you might say, I don't know, can I listen to a book? Is it the same as reading it? And you'll see, Paul and I are converts. It's better than reading it. audible.com/Windows. We thank Audible for their support of Windows Weekly. Do you have a pick this week, my friend?
I do. I have a software pick and then a short tip of the week, I guess.
Okay. I love those tips, please.
The software pick, it came about from some email I got. It's funny. I have this digital media course series that I'm doing on the Super site, and I wrote a few things in some of the articles there, and there's an ongoing thing there too, because I'm working on some articles now about ripping DVDs and making photo books, and some of the other topics that have yet to be done. But when I did the audio stuff, I had written about formats that I think you should avoid, things like FLAC and OGG. And I also wrote about, the video formats that I think you should worry about and think about. And somebody wrote me last week and said, you never mentioned this thing, or you never mentioned this, or, this format is great. Why don't, all that kind of stuff. And, one of the big issues on Windows, and I assume on other systems, is that, there's so many different audio and video formats out there, and there are different ways to get codecs onto your system and to play things. But there is actually, as it turns out, a media player out there that's free that actually installs a bunch of these codecs. So if you've got weird files that you want to play, that you've downloaded from the internet, or videos maybe you've created yourself in H.264, and you don't have, QuickTime or iTunes, you don't, for some reason don't want those Apple programs on your system or whatever it is, there's this software out there called VLC Media Player.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just one of those no-brainer kind of things. And I actually did a fresh install of Vista on a laptop just to kind of test this for myself. And on a fresh install of Vista with nothing else installed, no codecs or anything, you can install this thing on there, and it basically plays everything just out of the box. You don't have to download anything else. You don't have to make it work. So it's kind of a neat thing to have. I think a lot of the people that use it will just sort of adopt it as their only media player, although it doesn't do any of the protected stuff. You can't play, Cinema Now movies or anything like that. But for all the stuff you're going to want to get online, especially, or stuff you've ripped yourself and so forth, it'll play anything pretty much that you throw at it. And
it really does solve that hunt for codecs when you download.
And I've gone through different things with codec packages. I have two that I have installed, at different times, and I kind of go back and forth between those. But I was really interested to see that you could just install this player and this stuff would just work. So even if you just use it as sort of a secondary player, so you get some file, it doesn't work in Windows Media Player, but you really want to get it going, almost certainly it will play in VLC. So,
can I make a recommendation?
No, you cannot.
Please, Paul.
Yes, sir. What is it?
The folks at NewsGator have made kind of a surprising announcement. They sell FeedDemon and also NetNewsWire, which is the Macintosh feed reader. They're really the two most popular news readers in the world. And for reasons I'm not sure of, I understand completely, they decided to go free.
Really?
So, FeedDemon, I don't know if you use it. There are a lot of different really good feed readers, including, Google Reader, online stuff. But if you're looking for a good feed reader and a free one, FeedDemon's great. And they're now giving away the online synchronization. So, for instance, I have an account there, and if I use NetNewsWire and I add a feed and then use FeedDemon, it automatically updates the feeds on FeedDemon. Works with the BlackBerry as well. Highly recommend this, and it's free now, which is...
I had used... NewsGator had an Outlook plugin, and probably still does.
They do.
Which I believe I used for maybe even years, for a long time, when I was still using Outlook, for my primary email
right. That was their inbox program, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of lost track of that after I dropped
free
out.
Too.
So. It is free.
It's all free. Their business model, I'm guessing, they say we just want to be everywhere. We want to be the feed program, and then there's ways to make money off counting reads and things. So they're changing their business model, and I think that's great.
FeedDemon is a great looking application as far as Windows applications go.
Certainly well worth looking at. And then Paul's Vista Tip of the day.
Yes. Let me find it, shall I? This is just a short one. On mobile systems, laptops, tablet PCs, if you're running Windows Vista, there's something on there called Mobility Center. And Mobility Center is kind of a cool front end to a lot of the features that are important to people on the go. So
this kind of replaces IntelliSync, kind of.
Well, it's more actually what this replaces is if you've ever bought a laptop from someone like Dell or Lenovo or HP or anybody, they always make these stupid little applets to control things like, put it into presentation mode, change the brightness of the display, that kind of stuff. And I've always hated those kind of hokey third-party, applet things. So what this does is it basically creates a tile-based user interface where you can access system things like brightness, volume, battery, wireless network, secondary display, presentation mode, that kind of thing. They've made it extensible so that the Lenovos and Dells and HPs of the world can add their own things. So, for example, I've got it running now on a ThinkPad, and I can see that Lenovo has added things for battery stretch, which is a proprietary ThinkPad technology for making the battery last longer. The keyboard light that's built into the laptop. There's a screen zoom feature and some CompuTrace, probably like a anti-theft type of thing or something. So you can get that stuff from PC makers, and that's nice. But there are two problems with the Mobility Center. One is that you don't get this feature on desktop computers.
I was just looking for it on my PC, and it's not there.
Right. And the other one is that you can't arbitrarily extend this. Microsoft doesn't make the capability available to just anyone to go out there and add tiles to this. And you can't really extend it on your own, or developers can't really extend it on their own. So what has happened is, and by the way, on a laptop, if you have a Windows key on the keyboard, you can hit Windows key X to bring up Mobility Center. So in the past month or so, the Windows enthusiast community has figured out both how to get Mobility Center working on desktop computers and also how you can extend it yourself. And so there's a friend of mine, Rafael Riviera, who has done a lot of different hacks and patches and things for Windows users, but he's basically created a registry hack that you can run that will enable Windows Mobility Center.
Oh, interesting. So it's there. It just doesn't show up. Yeah.
It's just hidden.
Interesting.
Now, it doesn't work with the keyboard command. You can't do Windows key X to bring it up, but Windows Mobility Center will be in your start menu.
Wow.
And you can run it that way.
And is there a reason to do it on a desktop?
Well, no. I mean, I'm sort of looking. Let me bring. Well, there might be people that.
That's a hell of a tip, Paul. I just.
Yeah, I can't imagine why anyone would want it, but it is possible.
No, there's got to be some.
Really, what it is just it provides that same functionality. It's just that you don't need them as often on a desktop computer. Right. You're not typically switching between wireless networks on a desktop computer. Right. You're not typically switching displays and so forth. But there may be reasons for you to want to change the power management scheme or mute the display. It's just a little dashboard that you can leave running. But I think the thing that makes it really interesting is that you can extend it. And so you could create your own tiles, or developers could create their own tiles, and you could actually extend the functionality of this thing so they could add features that would, in fact, be very valuable to you. So he also describes that. So unfortunately, because of where this information is, it's kind of hard to explain how you would get to it. So I think the easiest thing to do for people that are interested in this is they could go to my Supersite blog. So if you go to winsupersite.com and click on the blog button, just search for Mobility Center from the blog, and there's only one post right now that involves Mobility Center. And it has links to Long Zen's article about this issue, and also to Raphael's registry hack. So you can see how that works. And he's also created his the first non-OEM tile for Windows Mobility Center, which is a power button, by the way, so you can turn off the computer from the Mobility Center.
Cool. So that's available through Windows Supersite. That's winsupersite.com. And you click the, it's not the Internet Nexus blog link.
No, it's the blog button that's in the toolbar.
The Supersite blog.
Yeah.
Oh, I see, right up there. Yeah, because you haven't done much on the Internet Nexus.
No, because I started blogging on the Supersite late last year.
Yeah,
and I wasn't sure
consolidated
how to
everything
handle
too.
it.
Yeah, it just makes sense to do that. Why send people all over the place?
Yeah, well, the big issue though is I still have one of the things I do in the Nexus, which I like doing, is I give away books and I sell used electronics that I don't use anymore for drastically reduced prices. Not to make money.
How do you do that? Who does the fulfillment?
What's that?
How do you? I mean, do you have a back end that does that, or you just ask people to send you an email and say?
Oh no! I just people just email me, and I use PayPal for payment.
That's a good idea, because I have a ton of junk I'd love to get rid of.
Yeah, it's just the overhead to doing this is onerous. My wife, in the interest of getting junk out of the house, has agreed to do the shipping stuff.
Ooh, she's sorry.
Oh yeah. So. So I will probably continue doing that through the Nexus, because it doesn't seem like that would be appropriate to do through a commercial site, I guess.
Right.
But
everything must go is the last post.
Yes, right. And I'll do another one of those.
That's great.
Within the next 30 days or so. So,
but if you go to the Supersite blog, that's where you'll find the information on adding Windows Mobility Center to their desktop, even though you don't really need it.
Well, no, I did. You may not. You may. I mean, I'm not here to judge. I am only here to provide.
I told you not to make me laugh. I've done so well this whole show, and you finally made me laugh, and now I'm going to have a coughing fit.
It's like the Simpsons episode. I asked for Zima, not emphysema.
Oh, man.
Sorry.
Oh, man. Told you not to make me laugh. All right, Paul, we're going to wrap this up. Taking next week off because it's Macworld Expo, and I don't want you to cry in your beer. Actually, you've got a better reason. You'll be crying in your fine French wine. You'll be in Paris.
Yes.
If I had to choose between Macworld Expo and Paris, I think I'd choose Paris, but
sure.
I'll send you a postcard.
Okay. And I'll send you one, too.
Yeah. Yours will be better. Now, have fun in Paris. That's so great. And we will talk again on the 24th. Or 25th.
Sounds good. Hope you feel better.
I'm feeling better already now that you made me laugh. That really got a lot of stuff up. Yeah. Solid as a rock now. Thank you, Paul Thurrott. We'll see you next time, everybody, on Windows Weekly.